Keynote speaker. Continuing on with the program, we will move forward with our keynote speaker. Our keynote speaker for today is Dr. Chia Youyee Vang. She's also the Vice Chancellor at UW Milwaukee, my alma mater. She was also a good mentor for me when I was a student there at UW Milwaukee. So let's give a big welcome to Dr. Chia Vang.
You're all so tired. Good afternoon. So I am so delighted to be here. Council Wisconsin. Chỉ sau bao cám, ở trong mấy chú kể luôn cho bé số linh số tứ, cú hạt ta mấy cho gì cho chó lu sợ sợ nó nè, cú bao hạt ta bé y chỉ có này, cho gì ở đâu rồi rong hẹn là gì không biết cho nào chế, cứ bán sao ha, ai cú ở mấy số có cháu, cú tôi chỉ tôi bán mấy lấy,แต่ ở trong mấy trình bán lúc con chơi nó chủ chỉ biết sao tao tôi nhau ok nó. So thank you so much. President Bakeng for inviting me to be here today. As Junior said, I'm a professor at UW Milwaukee. I'm also the Vice Chancellor there. I've been a history professor for 19 years. And it is my pleasure to be here today to share with you some perspectives. The organizers have given me the task of being the keynote speaker to talk about Hmong life during the war, and then also to talk about our migration experience, our refugee experience, and then what has happened in the last 50 years. But so many people have already mentioned so many important things, so I will try my best to not repeat too much, but I think it's also very important for me as a history professor to talk about some of the larger geopolitical issues that resulted in us being here today. So, trong linh tao tú bà chủ bé mong lúc lắm nén của chủ cho nhớ tới chờ lọt trồ mấy chọn lâu thì mấy tú bao còn được rong hè mấy tú ôn luôn nên đã lù lợ để chỉ hàng là mấy tú bao lỡ để của hàng loạn kiến tao xứ cho của chọn lộ họ tao. So today, next slide please. So what I hope to do is that many people have talked about the war, and I think it's very important. After the end of the Vietnam War, or the people in Asia, we all know that people in Asia call it the American War, right? Cho tôi nên nhớ là chỗ tê, nhớ làm tê, bố hạt ta cho mình cả, bố chỉ hạt ta cho nhớ làm. So còn đây là chạy chính to bây giờ tàu mô giải hải rồi mình. But what is important for us as a history professor for the last 20 years? I have done research. I have interviewed many elders, including the widows, including the nurses who are the exhibit before over there. So if you think about our veterans, the contributions, you think about this slide here, if you can see, we know that wars, when war happens, men go to war. The women, their lives change too. Because when your father, the sons go to war, what do the women do? The women do their job, and they do all of the men's job. And so women's roles changed dramatically during the war as well. And we know that it was orchestrated, that the US CIA recruited Hmong. But you all know, right, that it was at the highest level. At the very highest level, we call it a secret war. It continues to be called a secret war. But it is only a secret because the American public was not talking about it. Every single year, Congress allocated funding for military assistance, for development in Laos, and we saw schools that were made available to our young Hmong people. We saw USAID, USAID, they had so many people working. We saw the nurses completely transform Hmong women's role in Hmong society, to be teachers, to be nurses. They contributed a great deal as well. So I want us to give a big round of applause for the nurses who contributed to the secret war in Laos. because I think they play a very important role as well. Next slide, please. So we talked a lot about Hmong. Some people talk about airplanes flying into Vietnam. The Hmong pilots did not go into Vietnam. They were providing close air support to General Vang Pao on the Laos side. So very importantly, we saw that it was just not Hmong. Uncle Vatzong said earlier, it was Khmer, Lao, other groups that contributed to the war effort as well. So we know that for 15 years, we look at the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Many of you are very familiar with this. You saw how the war was fought on four fronts, right? You saw how the war was very much the Royal Lao Army fighting throughout Laos, and you have the Hmong soldiers under General Vang Pao fighting in the northern part. You have American bombers based in Thailand and based in Vietnam. They would go bomb North Vietnam. When bombs didn't completely drop, they would drop it on Laos. That's why Laos is one of the most bombed countries in the world. Every time we go see Laos, the remnants of war, the craters are still there. And every year, hundreds of lives are still claimed by unexploded ordnance. Because if a cluster bomb drops and it doesn't explode right away, it doesn't hit correctly, it doesn't explode. Years later, farmers, cows, children can step on them and explode. So the legacy of war, the lasting impact of war didn't end in 1975. So we also talk about the air war is very important. The pilot, somebody mentioned earlier, when a B-52, when an American B-52 drops bombs, they are so high up, they don't always hit the target. They do massive destruction, but they don't always hit the target. But it was the Hmong T-28 pilots who flew very low, and they are the ones who were able to support the troops on the ground. So we want to remember them as well. Next slide, please. So I reflect, I think about the task that I'm asked to do today, to reflect about the last 50 years. And I think about the war. The war was never about the people of Laos, Vietnam, and Cambodia. It was always a larger political debate. So what I call great power diplomacy, in 1973, in January, the peace agreement, the same peace agreement that had been talked about 68, 69, 70, 71. Finally, in 1973, we have a peace agreement. It gave the Americans the opportunity to leave the region. The next month, we have the Vientiane Agreement. Many of the elders here, you were there, you saw it, you were witness to this Vientiane Agreement. And then we also have 1973 to 1975, the elders here. I was only a small child, so I'm not a veteran, I don't have personal experience. But I know that the elders here, 1973 to 75, I've talked to so many of you who talk about they were still fighting, sporadic. It was peace for the Americans because they left, but there was no peace in Southeast Asia. So very importantly, we've been talking about May 14, right? A little bit before the fall of Saigon, there was a small evacuation of Americans who were in Cambodia. And then April 30, the trickle down, the effects. And then up to May 14 when General Vang Pao left Long Giang. Really important to remember, these images help us to remember that it wasn't just one person. Many people were fleeing for their lives. Next slide, please. So the next topic that I'm asked to talk about is that I was a small child, so when my family left, I don't remember a whole lot. I remember being tired and hungry, but I don't remember being afraid because my parents were with me. So if I think about how Hmong people, if you look at the images, crossing the river, people walking barefoot. I was a small child, I didn't have shoes. I'm not in that picture, just letting you know that. But one of the things I want to remind us is that in 1975, a lot of people did not support having Hmong people come to the United States. Let's face the facts. Because they look at images like this. If you look at the images of Hmong fleeing like that, You might also think that they might not be able to survive in modern society. So some people did not agree to have Hmong people come to this country because we looked like that. We didn't have shoes, we barely had anything, and they did not think that we could survive. But very interestingly, if you think about all the refugees, our stories are the same. We crossed the river from Laos to Thailand, we spent some time in a refugee camp. Some people stayed long enough to want to remember. My family was in Bang Vinai for only 6 months. My T number is T46159. We were there for so short that we remember, but many people were there for 6 years, 10 years. And so they became almost semi-permanent life. Look at the ways in which the living condition was. People are in shacks and living with children, being born, dying. And here we were, thousands and thousands of Hmong refugees, waiting on the mercy of countries to accept us, to give us refuge. So for so many of our elders, the waiting for family that they have left behind, fearing that they won't be able to go forward. They don't want to go forward, they want to go backward. Those are the kind of dilemma that our elders faced at the time. Next slide, please. So in terms of how Hmong people, we know, we live this experience. You know your family, you know your neighbors, we know our families, so this kind of global view of Hmong resettlement in the United States. So over time, you see how our population grew. In 1980, the 1980 census only counted 5,000 Hmong people. But we know that by over 40,000 Hmong people have actually been resettled, but they were not counted. So over the course of our lives, the margin of error or how people count people in the census have continued to undercount our population. So I'm not going to read all of that, but you can see how our populations were increasing in this country, the regions that we lived in, and now we know that the Midwest region, although California has the largest population as a state, the Midwest as a region continues to be the hub for Hmong to rebuild our lives in places that are very different from where we came from. But there are other factors that contributed to why we could thrive in this environment. Next slide, please. So this is not everything. Many people have talked about many things. I want to just briefly talk about a brief snapshot of what I think is really important in terms of our Hmong community. If you look at in terms of poverty, when we first came, few of our elders could work. People come with very difficult conditions, difficult lived experiences, they couldn't get the jobs. So if you think about how our poverty level in 2020 is 14% of our population. Look at how it was earlier. In 1990, it was 64% of our community lived in poverty. That's a huge change. So I'm not talking about individuals, I'm giving you these larger landscape. Education attainment. You think about 2020, 26% of our Hmong Americans aged 25 or older have a bachelor's degree. And 6% of our over 300,000 Hmong people have graduate degrees. So think about that. 1972, we had one. 1982, we had a couple more. But today, there's so many, I can't even count them anymore. And then you think about how home ownership is a way for people to build wealth. That's how rich people in this country, they build wealth. They have real estate, they have investments, and then they leave the wealth to their children. So Hmong home ownership is an indicator of our own wealth and progress as well. So you look at the significant changes from 1990 to 2020. That's huge. In less than one generation, we're able to make that progress. Next slide, please. So another snapshot, which I think is very, very important, entrepreneurship. Hmong entrepreneurship is at the core of all of our elders. No one likes to depend on other people. They help each other, but throughout Hmong history, people have been so independent. they help themselves, they care for their family. So I think it's really fascinating that in the beginning we will have grocery stores and a few kinds of businesses, but now there's so many, including adult daycare centers like Tuaj Center, and then you look at all over the country. There's just so much. From Seattle, the Hmong participating in flower farming, the Hmong people in North Carolina, the rice, and in Fresno, the Asian supermarket. I was there last week. So many people are having so many wonderful ways to support themselves because they are not people who want to sit and depend on others. Next slide, please. So I want to say Brenda is so fantastic, first person to be elected here, but I'm looking at a global kind of national landscape. So if you look at from 1991, when Youyee won the first elected position in the United States as a school board member, to now, the Minnesota legislature has now 9 people in the legislature. Think about that. Think about that, right? In less than 1 generation, you have so many people making waves that pioneers that people didn't imagine for us maybe even 2 decades ago. Many people, we have quite a few judges now, but some of you know, and some of you may not know. The very first judge to be elected is our own Christy Yang. Other people have been appointed, and that's a different process, but it's in our state that happened. So very importantly, I think it's important for us to kind of remember that we must, not feel too bad for ourselves because we've done a great deal for ourselves. And I'm not going to go through too much, so can you please go to the next slide? One of the things that I think is very important for our Hmong community, our Lao community, is that when we first came, many people talk about how we don't belong here. How many of you have seen that? Many people say, you don't belong here. Why are Hmong people here? Why do you come to Wisconsin? Why do you go to Minnesota? Why are you here? You don't have a country. Who are you? You don't belong here. But I think the veterans and the elders have done a fantastic job. I am so proud of the ways in which they advocated for themselves. They made decisions, and then they advocated for their well-being, for the recognition that they deserved for our elders. And there's many statues of General Vang Pao in California, but if you think about the 1997, the plaque in Washington, D.C. in Arlington National Cemetery, the nation's national cemetery. If you are not looking for it, you may not even see it. But if you haven't seen it, and you go to Washington, D.C., please go visit the plaque honoring our Lao and Hmong veterans and American veterans. Since 1997, there's a number of legislations recognizing Hmong at the highest level, but no benefits, right? The recognition, yes, you fought for the U.S., you supported the U.S. troops, but no benefits for our veterans. Very interestingly, there's at the state level many other legislations, as the governor mentioned earlier, recognizing Hmong. Very, very important contributions there. But I think what's very interesting is that in Minnesota, how many of you have heard that just last month, the Senate and the House in the Minnesota legislature passed a bill. It has to still be signed into law to formally recognize Hmong veterans as veterans. Before it was talking about Hmong serving there, but as American veterans who have contributed so much. So that's a wonderful achievement for our community. Next slide, please. So you all see, if you haven't seen them, please go see them, right? So many people work so hard to have these memorials recognizing them. As a historian, I always say, if things are not written down, if things are not archived, and once the people who have personal experience are gone, it's going to be like it never existed. So you have to make sure you có cho phổ bây giờ tôi cho nó có một sai cho khó vì hết Cú yo ít tuần sai cho phao tiền đó. Cú cũ hết giờ biết chỉ một sau cha, biết chỉ một khẩu cha. bây giờ mua cho mù khai cho để cho tôi nên cái bố bao thầu thầu bố tàn để dùng lấy cái nữ tu chỉ là con chị rồi ở trong đó. Next slide please. So again, the organizers have asked me to kind of reflect about the last 50 years. What do I think are some of the progress? We need 3 hours to do that, but I don't have 3 hours. So I just want to say that what's very interesting to me as I reflect about our refugee parents is that when people leave their country, no one leaves home unless home is not safe. When the elders left, it was supposed to be temporary. They were supposed to seek refuge and they thought they could come back. But they couldn't, so they kept going. So the people who died as they tried to leave, the people who were drowned on the Mekong River, the people who were killed in the jungles, their lives are not for nothing. So I think about how I am the 1.5 generation. I'm the bridge generation born in Laos, but come to this country young enough to go to school and to be able to do the things I've been able to do. It is precisely because of the sacrifice of the elders. But as soon as I say we must not forget the past, I also want to say, as a scholar who has traveled all over the world, studied Hmong in different parts across the world, I wanted to say that I am so proud, as others before me have said, I am so proud of what we have been able to do. From small refugee children with no shoes, growing up in this country, we're able to do so many amazing things. So for me, when I think about it, I'm so pleased. I think about the Bull. Hmong are doing amazing things. The Thai boxing. I think about Megan Kang, the professional golfer. And of course, Suni Lee. The message is very clear to me. When people say we don't belong, I think we do. That our elders have paid for our citizenship with the blood of our soldiers, our boys, the men and women who died as they tried to escape. So the message I have is that our Hmong experience in the United States in the last 50 years, there's a very clear message. Any group, especially a group like the Hmong, who people say we don't belong here, I strongly believe that any group with the opportunities and the resources can also become these champions. So I'm proud of what the young people have done. I'm proud of the elders have done. I am so excited about what the next generation is going to be able to accomplish. My son is here. He's going to do amazing things. Your children are here. We will continue to stand on the shoulders of our elders. We also have a duty to make sure that as the bridge generation, we make sure that the sacrifices are not forgotten. So thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this. I've written many books and traveled over the world, and there is no other place that I would rather be than here in the United States of America. Thank you so much.